right, so when we left off then, this was right here. And hopefully everybody is now to that point. Okay? A couple things just so you see this. All right, you may or may not have noticed if I click in here, you see how if I move it around and stuff, I get these guides? It is designed so if I want to kind of center stuff, basically, to view on the screen, I'm able to do that. All right, now I want to show you something, and even if you were here last, I didn't show you. What I'm about to show you right now, I did not show you this last time. But let's suppose that you're the kind of person that you're constantly just clicking something when you didn't mean to, and it moves a little bit, and you're like, darn it, this thing moved, and I forgot to do a Control-Z, and I'm always trying to get it all so it's all lined up pretty, and I just wish I could keep it there, and for lack of better word, just lock it. You can. All right. So what I'm going to do is, and it doesn't matter, I'm going to click on the form right here, and I'm going to do a Control-A to highlight everything. So I clicked on the form, and I'm doing a Control-A to highlight everything. Then down on my properties, so what I'm doing now is going to affect everything that I've got here. And you'll notice there's a property that's called, strangely enough, locked, that's set to false. So if I click where it says false, I get the down arrow, and I can change it to true, or I can just double click on the word, and it goes from true to false. So if it's true like this, notice I get the little locks on here, all right, and now I can't move them. So if that matters to you, as far as moving stuff around, then do that. All right? The other thing, too, is I'm going to save my project, and you should get used to saving it fairly often. And you should be doing, if you look up on the screen here, either a file, save all, or click that double disk icon right there, or do a Control-Shift-S, all right, to save. To run these, notice that you've got a button here that says Start, and there's a green arrow next to it. If you just click on the green arrow, it'll run the program. You shouldn't get any error messages because we haven't put any code in yet. All right, so the buttons will push in if you push on them, but they don't do anything because we're going to put the code in there right now to do something. And right now the exit doesn't work, so you got to literally click the X up here to get out. All right. So the next thing we might want to do is, again, you don't have, I'm going to run it again. You don't have to, but I don't like where that runs. I'd like it to show up right in the middle of the screen. So to do that, again, I click on the form, and I go down towards the bottom of my properties window, and I find Start Position, which right now says Windows Default Location, and I want to change that to Center Screen. What I'm showing you here, I don't grade you on this. So if you don't center it when you run it, then you don't center it. But somebody who runs your program, what I'm trying to do is show you, equip you with the tools to make what you do look as professional as you can possibly make it look. That's all. All right. So notice now after doing that and setting it the start position from Windows default location to center screen, now notice when I run it, it does just that. It comes up in the center of the screen. Okay? All right. So we have to put our code in. Show you a little trick just so you know. Sometimes you want to jump to the code window. Everybody hear what I said? Sometimes you want to jump to the code window, but you don't want to double click anything. So if you're anywhere on the form and you right mouse click, you can choose View Code. Or you can hit your F7 and that brings you into your code. All right? Now before the break, if you'd all look at this, even again, this is new stuff. Liz came up and talked to me during the break, and she's right, and I didn't know this, but she's more intuitive, I guess, than I am. She said, hey, you know, if you grab where this picture box was and you right mouse click on it, all right, so if let me throw a new one out there for a second. So if I go to the picture box, I'm going to throw one out right here. If I right mouse click on it, it shows, I thought it was there, wasn't it? Choose image. So that's the other way that you can bring that up, and it's probably easier than the way I showed you. There's almost always multiple ways in here of doing the same thing. There's not enough time to explain every way of doing something to you. There just isn't. So I may not explain something where it might be explained in the book. And the reason for that is I want to make sure for every assignment that you get, you've got a week to work on it, a week of class, while you're here and the lab assistants are here, etc. That's more important than showing you 5 different ways of doing the same thing. All right? So what I want to do now, and I'm taking for granted that everybody has this and it's all set up. Well, we talked about this last time. If I double click now where it says exit, that brings up my code window for, and you notice if you did name your buttons the way I told you to, it should say button exit underscore click. Visual languages like Visual Basic and Visual C#, they're known as event-driven languages. In other words, this program technically is stupid. It sits there until you do something. So it just sits there and waits. It's in an infinite loop waiting for you to do something. And if what you do is to click this button, then what it does is it sees if there's any code associated with that button. If there is, it attempts to run that code. Same thing with this button or with this button. All right. Now, what we can do right here, the easiest way, and this is the harshest way, we could just type in there right now this dot close, like that. All right. You could just type that in there. We're going to actually add more to this in just a minute. But it shows you a couple things about the code window in here. First of all, close is the name of a method. And close doesn't require any additional information, but it still needs parentheses after it, because if you don't put the parentheses after it, the system thinks that close is not a method, it's the name of a variable. It's not, it's the name of a method. So you need paren. All C# executable statements must end with a semicolon. And what I want to close is the thing that I'm working on, and that's this. That's a keyword. And you may or may not have noticed this, but if you look up on the screen here, when I typed in this, first of all, notice when I type in THI, it's not blue yet. That's the. That's not a keyword. As soon as I put in the S, it turns blue. Now when I do that and I type in a dot, that's IntelliSense that you see on your screen right there. So I can choose any one of these things that's in here by double clicking on it. Well, I want close, so I'm going to double click. And notice it didn't put in paren for me. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But if I put in paren, but if I forget to put the semicolon at the end and I move off, notice I get that. And if I put my mouse over it, it says semicolon inspected. If I try to run it again, now I get an error. Almost always when you get this error, say no, because then it'll bring up the window at the bottom of your screen here. I should move mine over. All right. And when you do this, it says semicolon expected. Well, what does that mean? If I double click on the error, it takes me right to where the problem was, or where the compiler perceives the problem to be. So I put in my semicolon, and now everything's cool. All right, notice now if I save this and run it, and I click exit, boom, I'm gone. But that's pretty harsh, because if I run it and I'm not really paying attention and I mean to click show heads, but I accidentally, or show tails, and I accidentally click exit, now I haven't gotten the chance to back out, for lack of better words. All right, so I'm going to put some code up here, and I'm going to assume right now, all right, you know, I'm looking at Micah and he's like, you know what, I don't want to type. So the code that I'm going to show you, is out there. It's on the P drive for the class. So under the 152, 142 folder in class today, and it says right now it's just in a text file, but it's called exit button code. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open that. I'm going to grab all of it. Alt-A, Alt-C, or I'm sorry, Control-A, Control-C. And then I'm going to go back to my program. Oops, and I don't know why I got out of here, but okay, I'm going to go back to my program. Come on. Oh. And I'm going to paste it in. No, I don't want this. I want to get back to here. There you go. So I want to take all this that I had in there and get rid of it. This dot close, and paste that in. Now you can also type this in, and I'll leave it there, so if you want to type it in, you can. Or again, go out to, as I told you before, go out to there and find the file that's called exit button code or something like that. It's a text file. Double click on it, which will open it. Do a Control-A, Control-C, or an edit select all or however you choose it and put that code in. Okay, so do that right now. Or again, I'll leave this up here for a second. If you'd rather manually, this is it right here. If you'd rather manually type it in, you can do that too. Yes. That's a good question. The question was, is this particular to single quotes or can you put in double quotes? The only time you'll use single quotes is if it's a single character. Other than that, it'll expect everything to be in double quotes. All right? And I'm going to leave this up there for about 2 minutes. Then I'm going to run the program again so you can see the difference. All right? And again, if you have problems doing this, you already have the completed program. You can always go back and copy and paste stuff in there later. All right? You know, I don't want to sound like, what's his name, Anthony Robbins, but it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you're starting out of the gate and you're starting out slow or you're having problems, you know, I would say worry a lot more if it's week 10 than if it's week 1. We haven't even gotten into the book yet. All right. You'll notice that what's in here, the keywords are in blue. All right. My variable names are in black, and the strings are in red. And the name of some of the system methods are in a lighter blue. Turquoise, whatever you call it, and comments are in green. And the other thing I want to say is I want everybody to realize this, whether it's purple, whether it's pink, regardless, you know, I've got to watch how I say this because I'll explain why in a second. Anybody can learn to create an interface. Anybody can learn to create a beautiful interface. You're not paid to create an interface. You're paid so that when somebody clicks these buttons, the code does what it's supposed to do. Okay? Years ago, I told the class, some of you have heard me say this already, but years ago I told the class I could teach a monkey in 30 minutes how to create an interface. And within an hour, he'd probably do it better than me. Okay? But then so one of the students went to my boss and said, Mr. Scott called us monkeys. No, you're not monkeys. None of you are. Well, what I'm saying is the act of doing this becomes, after a while, it's repetitive. What will be changing over time is the code. All right? So this stuff really doesn't matter that much. All right. The only thing I want to show you is I'm saving this. I'm going to run it again. Notice now, if you look up on the screen here, everybody, when I click the exit button, notice what happens. It comes up and it says, here it says close form now. Everybody see that? That close form now, that's this. Want to close the form? That's this. That question mark, that's this. The buttons that say yes and no, that's this. Does that make sense? It's fairly intuitive once you've done it. It really and truly is. So what we're doing up here is we're building this. Now, believe it or not, I didn't need the caption. I didn't need the message. I could have done everything that we've done here. I could have done with just the inside of this message box. All right? But as you probably guess, if I change the caption to, do you want to close the form now? If I changed it here and I ran it again, that would change then up here. And if I change this to, are you sure you want to close the form right here, and ran it again, that would change right here. All right? The suggestion by Microsoft is that when you're asking a question, that the icon you use is a question mark. There's another one that you might have seen. It kind of looks like a railroad crossing, and it's red and it's an X. You should only do that when it's pretty bad. All right? There's another one that'll have an eye on it that's information. You want to tell somebody, it's like, well, maybe you were close, but you might want to do this type of thing. We'll get into all that in later classes. All right. Notice if I say no, the program keeps running. But if I run it now and I do click yes, it stops running. So what we've done is programmatically, we've come in here, we've created the caption using code, we've created the message using code, we've created the actual message box using code. Then we said, if you click the yes button, close the form. Does that make sense? And again, we haven't even looked at the book yet, so if it doesn't totally make sense, I wouldn't let that bother you. I really wouldn't. I'd say that would probably be another good reason between now and Monday to try to go in and look at Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. This stuff is explained really well in the book. Gaddis is a great author. He also provides, if you look out there, it's in the book someplace. Supposedly you can sign up and he's got video notes where he actually has lectures that, since you've got the book, you can go out there and you can watch him do different things. I have heard that he's got a very high-pitched southern voice, so that may or may not affect whether or not you want to listen to him. I don't know. All right, so that's our exit code. Well, when we look at it, so what's left? These two things, right? And they're each 2 lines of code, and when you think about it, they're the same line of code. Except when we click this one, we want this to show, and we want that to go away. When we click this one, we want this to show and that to go away. Does that make sense? All right, so it doesn't matter which one we do first. Let's just do show heads. It's the first one. All right, so I'm going to say picture box. And again, please look on the screen. Notice as soon as I typed in PIC or PICT, what kicked in right away? The IntelliSense. And what I want is the picture box show head, so I can just double click that, and now I've got that in there. Dot. If I go down to the V properties, notice there's a visible. All right, so I want visible. Well, I'll give you a hint here. It wants to know if visible should be true or false. What do you think? True. And if I make this one true, or tour, if I make this one true, what am I going to make this one? Somebody said it. What's that? You're going to make it code? Now, guess what? These 2 lines of code, if I copy them, I can put it in for the other one and just change the true to a false, right? And the false to a true. That's what I'm going to do because I don't feel like copying. So I'm going to copy. All right, and again, double click on here to bring that one up, paste that back in. And now I want show heads to be false and show tails to be true. All right. And again, this happens every semester. I try to have you do a project first, because the reason I do this is people who gravitate towards this stuff, if I start going over the chapter first, then I've got a third of the people who are sitting there and they're doing what I'm trying to show anyway. And then the other people are mad because they're trying to listen, they're trying to see what's up on the screen, and somebody else, they hear this click, 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 click stuff. I just think it makes more sense to do it this way. You had a question. Usually with dot show and dot hide, all right, normally you use those with forms. All right. Okay. But now I'm going to save it again. I'm going to save it and run the program. Okay. Show heads, show tails. Show heads, show tails. Okay. And exit, no, exit, yes. Now there's one thing, and it depends on how anal you are about things like this, that may or may not bother you. Anybody see anything wrong with the screen as it is right now? They're both showing. So you've got your choice. You can leave it that way, or you can change it. And when you change it, you've got your choice. You could have none of them appear when you first start, or one of them appear, or you could have both of them appear. All right? So I'm going to assume that when we start this, just to help the person out, we want the heads to be showing, and we want the tails to not be showing. Does that make sense? Okay, you don't have to do this, but just for completeness sake. So I'm going to exit, and I want to show you something. Again, we didn't go over this the other day, so you probably didn't see this, and you might find this confusing. You say, "Oh my God, more confusing stuff," but I just want to show you this, okay? And that's this: that when you look down here in this area, what I want to do is when my form begins to run, I want it to come up, and I want to show heads but not show tails. Now I'm not going to do this, but if I double click on my form right now, if I double click on it, it'll bring up what's called the form load routine. And literally, most of the time that's a good place to put something like this, but sometimes what happens is that's when the form is loading into memory, not after it's loaded. So if I want something to happen once my screen starts showing, I don't put it in the form load routine, I put it in what's called the form activated routine. And you might say, well, big deal. I just want to show you a way of getting to that, okay? So if you look over here, please look up on the screen here, and you see these icons that are right here. The icon that you probably have right now is the alphabetical, the AZ. And if I click the lightning bolt, which is 2 over from it, that shows me these are all the different routines I can call just for a form. So you see there's 20, 30, whatever of them. And what I want is I want to go up to the very top and find the one that says activated and just double click on it. And that brings up the form's activated routine. There are other ways of doing it than the way I showed you. I've showed people other ways and they say this is the most straightforward way. Okay? And what I want is I want my heads to be visible and my tails to be invisible. So I'm going to take that same code I had before, but I want heads to be visible and I want tails to be invisible. All right. Do you want, if it would all look up on the screen here, does everybody realize I replicated the code? That code right there is the exact same code as right here. So what we'll get to in later classes is how to write a routine so we only have to write it once and we'll call it twice. All right? Why? Because that's the way that you should code. You shouldn't be replicating stuff all over the place. For now, that's fine. So I put it in there. I'm going to save again, and I'm going to run it. And now if everything worked, now I've got my heads up when I start. All right? Now clicking show heads again doesn't do anything because it's already showing. We could have put code in there that says, hey, buddy, heads is already showing. All right? And show tails, boom, we can go back and forth. Now you know if you wanted to, you could put a third button in here, and you know how to do this. That would be called either, you could put 2 more buttons in, one that was called show both and one that was called show neither. And all you'd have to do then would be to go back in there, create the buttons, and make both of these true or both of these false, depending on whether it was show both or show neither. Does all that make sense? All right, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to, rather than even going into the book right now, all right, because some of you, and this can be overwhelming at first. All right, it can. I understand that. All right, and if you think, again, if I came off in any way, being flippant or whatever, I apologize. I don't try to be. My wife says, no, you don't have to try. You're just naturally that way. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But we will be going over this stuff, and we will be building. But once we get to maybe chapter 3 or 4, whatever, I'm going to say, hey, we're going to create this interface. I'm going to create it right in front of your face. And I'm going to expect that you're going to be able to do it without any help. All right? For every chapter that we go over in here, we're going to do a program as a class. That's my plan, is to spend a class period going over a program as a class, then spend a class period going over the stuff that's in the book, and then turning it loose for a week. And the next week after that, we come back, we go over the next chapter by doing a program, then we go over the next chapter in a book, then I turn you loose for a lab for a week. And that's what we're going to do. What that means is when we get towards the end of the semester, the headier stuff that's in the last 2 or 3 or 4 chapters, I'm going to lecture on that, but there's not going to be enough time to give you homework on it. There just isn't. I'll still lecture on it. And I'll still show you a programmatic example and provide one for you. All right? Some of you, I know, because you're the way you are, what I'll try to do, and remind me of this, by no later than a week from today, I'll try to have posted every program that I plan on assigning. All the ones we'll do in class and all the ones I'm going to assign. That way, those of you, and you're shaking your heads right now, who want to get ahead and start doing things, you're able to do that. All right? Questions on what we went over? So if something didn't make sense, you need any one-on-one, raise your hand. John will help you, or Ben will help you, and if they're both preoccupied, I'll help you. I want to start producing these, and with 20 minutes, I might get them both done. If I do, they'll both be out there by noon today, if I can possibly get them out there by then. Okay? And I'm even going to take this one that we just created, even though I've got a copy of it out there already, but I'm going to take this heads, tails that we just did, and out on the P drive, So there's two of them out there. They're basically, the only difference between these are the colors. So there's heads, tails, and there's coin flip. The last thing I'll tell you, I am done, but just so you know, let's say you just wanted to show this to somebody. What's a fast way of doing it? Well, if you go to your folder, and you can all do this. If you go to your folder and you double click on your folder, and you'll have another folder inside with the same name. If you double click on that one, if you double click on bin and debug, and you double click on the name of the project, that runs it from right in there. And if you said you did that too fast, you just basically have to, again, you have to go out to the name of the project, you click on the folder, you click on the folder inside, you click on bin, debug, and the name that's got application on it, and that runs it. Okay? What I'll probably end up doing is, and I didn't do this last semester, and some people told me they wished I would have, what I'll probably do is I'll probably put the executable, my executable out there. I've written all these already, so you can see what mine looks like. Yours doesn't have to look like mine. Doesn't have to be the same color, etc. That's okay. But at least you'll know what the end product should look like.